Yo, 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 visualize shark takes, hit the wave grinding. In the chat, gun shark odds make it rhyming. Sunday vibes, smooth bets, no confining. Hats engaged, can't stop us from shining. Bet on the spread, liking it, keep it tight. Push the odds further, jack on a hindsight. Odds fellows mind grasping the right sight. Hats, caps on heads, winners in plain sight. Hit the light, get in the chat, feel the flow, cash it, every dollar see the bank roll. Sunday grind and picks, now you gotta know. Extra points on the screen, sharp minds always glow. Big parlays, predictions we hold. Standing tall, betting knowledge all.
On a suddenly not so casual Wednesday night in early October, it is NFL, the extra points, the big show, looking ahead to Thursday Night Football in Week 5. We're here on a Wednesday. We love to be here. Guns Picks, what's going on?
Yeah, we had a little bit of a rescheduling on my part. I got Oplos on Thursday. Actually, I'm going to be playing golf all day. Don't know if I'll be back in time for the show. Nonetheless, we had to give you the picks to pay the bills. We are here to talk about Thursday Night Football. We not only like the sides, we got a little bit of prop action, of course. If you've been following the props, I've been on a little bit of heat up when it comes to the props and the live shows. So, Shark, let's talk some Thursday Night Football, shall we?
Absolutely. 8:15 tomorrow night, October 3rd. It will be in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Big divisional matchup this week. Real snapshot to this card. Tons of divisional games this week. The show on Sunday will be absolutely on fire. And throw it to the gun, a collaboration play. These plays have been hitting at an alarming rate. We're not surprised. We love to bring you the detailed analysis. Guns, let's open this one up. Atlanta on the money line, a collaboration.
Yeah, Mercedes-Benz will be rocking on a Thursday night. Where you got Tampa coming off a nice little win for themselves against Philly. They're 3-1 on the year with a plus 4 point differential, minus 16 net yard average. That will become key statistics when we get into the breakdown here. Then we got Atlanta coming off a 26-24 win. I don't think they scored an offensive touchdown in that game. A lot of field goals and defensive plays and special teams was the culprit on that one. They're minus 51 net yards for that game, but they're 2-2 on the year with a minus 2 point differential, minus 27 net yard average. Now, if you look at Atlanta's current statistics, a little bit misleading because check out the teams that they've played so far. We're talking about Pittsburgh. They're ranked 11th in Massey Power Rankings and 3rd on the defensive end. And then on week 2, they had to play Philly. Granted, this team is a falling knife. They're 14th in the Massey Power Rankings and 28th in defense. So a little bit of a weaker opponent there. But then they had to play Kansas City in Sunday Night Football. Not the greatest spot for any team in the NFL. And they're number 1 in Massey Power Rankings in defense and overall. And then they played New Orleans last week, winning that game by 2. New Orleans is 6th in Massey Power Rankings and 8th on the defensive end. So Atlanta has faced the second toughest schedule in the league so far, and they're minus 27 net yard average, minus 2 point differential in those spots. This is not a bad Atlanta team. A little bit misleading on the outcomes. And then we have Tampa on the other side. Very different story. They face Washington. Washington is ranked 26th in Massey Power Rankings, 32nd in defense. And then they have Detroit, 9th in Massey Power Rankings, 5th on the defensive end. They scored 20 points in that game in the win. And then they have Denver. I lost to them. Guess what? Denver's defense is ranked number 2 in the NFL currently. They lost 26-9. And, of course, they faced Philly, and you know how bad that defense is. They dominated them the whole game. They're ranked 28th on the defensive end. So Tampa has faced the 24th toughest schedule so far to date, minus 16 net yard average, only a plus 4 point differential. Now you got to look at what Tampa wants to do. Still a one-dimensional team, still want to pass the ball, 223 yards per game, 70% pass completion rate, but they give up a lot of sacks, 11.6% sack rate to their opponents this year. That is ranked 29th in the league. And, of course, Atlanta is much better at protecting the quarterback in Kirk Cousins. 5% sack rate this season given up to opponents. That's ranked number 6 in the league. Then you have Tampa. Does own the series. Every time these two teams meet, they're 7-2 straight up in their last 9. However, the QB during most of those was a guy I know, as I'm wearing this hat, was named Tom Brady. He was the quarterback for that team in most of those wins, and also it was a different coach. Now Todd Bowles takes over the team, and so does Baker Mayfield. Since they got together, Against Atlanta, they are 1-3 ATS versus Atlanta in those spots. And really, statistically and schedule-wise, Atlanta's just the better team here. They're 2-2. They don't have the better record, but their losses were against the number 1 and the number 3 ranked defenses in the NFL. So with Tampa facing the softer schedule and Tampa a little bit more one-dimensional, and this Atlanta team really has owned Todd Bowles, quite frankly, I think they get it done here on Thursday Night Football. So give me Atlanta money line -125 is the play.
Yeah, I mean, you made every great point that's possible in this game, but let me just jump off it from a point of emphasis. When you find a team like the Falcons who are already 0-3 ATS at home, you just want to buy that because they've been competitive and they've lost more or less what you would call coin flips. And this is one of the most interesting things with sports betting that I like to talk about probably more than any other handicapper you will ever hear on the air. I look at these games as if I'm on Mars looking at Earth and people are just numerical frequencies. They're not even really human beings, let alone professional athletes. When teams are playing to such a neutral mean and they're supposed to be right here, and one team just keeps pulling this direction, they're supposed to pull back. So when you see a team 0-3, you want to just automatically buy. And as Guns mentioned, the Falcons actually have potentially outlier games against Todd Bowles going back over the last 10. I think you go back to last year, different scheme, worse coach, Arthur Smith, clearly not on the level of Raheem Morris, and Desmond Ridder, clearly not on the level of Kirk Cousins. But in those two games last year, Atlanta did win a road game in Tampa Bay and outgained them significantly, 401-329. And a game played week 14 last year in December in Atlanta, the most recent matchup between these two teams. Atlanta outgained Tampa Bay 434-290. That is dominant, but somehow didn't win the game, 29-25. But for those of you guys who have watched us or watched the Falcons, you know Desmond Ridder was a turnover machine. And these non-covers from Atlanta really were propped up by his looseness with the football. Atlanta really dominated, 23 first downs in that game to only 16 for Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay did get a final drive touchdown with 31 seconds to go in the fourth quarter to win going away 29-25. So you talk about the line here in divisional football. That loss, Atlanta was -1.5. You lose at home 1.5. Again, you dominate. The next year, you open at 3. And this does suggest Atlanta to win this game by 5 points. And as Guns mentioned, with all the DVOA, the strength of schedule, incredibly sharp analysis. But my only point on that, going through the last 3 weeks with Tampa Bay, already exhibiting zigzag, play up to Detroit, come home and get your just absolutely blown out by Denver. Big bounce back blowout last week against Philadelphia. Now you come in here, first massive road game in the division all year. Revenge game, Kirk Cousins, new coach, 0-3 ATS. Buy it, live it, love it, and let's dominate. Guns with a prop bet Thursday Night Football Week 5. Tyler Algier, 5th round pick a couple years ago out of BYU, taking the over in rush yards at 31.5.
Yeah, I think this is a good spot for him because, quite frankly, at least in the last 3 games, he's been taking a brunt of the rushing carries as they're using Bijan a little bit more in the passing game. But we got to look at Tampa here. How do they do against the run? 5.4 yards per carry to opponents. They're ranked 29th in the league in that statistic, and also they're 22nd in the league in opponent rushing yards per game. Then you got to look at Atlanta. Atlanta has faced some pretty good rushing defenses. We're talking about Pitt, 27th, Philadelphia, outlier there, of course. Second, Kansas City Chiefs, and 8th in New Orleans. So they faced 3 top 10 rush defenses in the league in their first 4 games. In terms of DVOA. But then when you look at Tyler Algier in his stats in those games, of course, the first game, not the greatest stats in the world, but they were using a little Bijan too much. 3 carries, 21 rushing yards versus Pitt, 9 carries and 53 yards versus Philly. You see him start to ramp up here. Kansas City, 7 carries, 32 rushing yards. And then New Orleans, he had 8 carries, 60 rushing yards. So from an average, and then you look at the average rush stats versus Tampa when going back to 2023, the Atlanta Falcons had 11 carries, 62.6 rush yards per game. Then we have Tampa. Rush is defense is ranked 17th in terms of rushing DVOA. And then Algier versus divisional opponents dating back to 2023, 12 carries, 52 rushing yards. So all these stats are saying over if you look at the number here. Then you have Algier 2024 season average, 7 carries, 42 rushing yards. And then Algier rushing yards versus Tampa. If you go back to last year, he had some pretty decent numbers, 15 carries, 50 rushing yards. And I know that Bijan is kind of dealing with a lingering hamstring injury. Granted, he's off the injury report because he was day to day. But I think for that reason, they've been running Tyler Algier a little bit more in these games. And he's more of a north and south runner, not an east-west, try to make a move type of runner. So I think Atlanta likes that. I know Raheem Morris kind of likes that too. They're utilizing him a lot more in the offense. This guy's guaranteed anywhere between 7 to 9 carries a game. And I think with that statistic, I think he's going to get over his rushing yards here, knowing that this Tampa team gives up 5 yards per carry. So give me the over on Tyler Algier rushing yards, 31.5 as the play.
Incredibly sharp analysis from the gun on a suddenly not so casual winning Wednesday. Segueing to Sunday, we want to discuss the London game because, as you guys know, hopefully your notifications are on. 10:30 a.m. on Sunday is when we drop our live show. It will be almost halftime in London at that point, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So we're not going to be dropping an official at halftime, and we want to have a discussion now. Guns and I were just chatting about this off the air. A game that has a ton of intrigue. I think, truthfully, historically, a lot of these London games have been total duds. Oftentimes the league not wanting to disrupt the travel schedule of their contending teams, kind of throwing bottom feeders over there because they know international followers have never seen an NFL game. Any NFL game seems great, but you're sitting here with the 4-0 Vikings hosting or not. I'm not entirely sure who's the designated home team, the Jets. I don't have to go into a lot of details. You guys know the Jets have a ton of intrigue with Aaron Rodgers, and the Vikings are the biggest surprise of this season by a mile. We started looking at this off the air. Guns, I'll throw it to you for some comments, and we'll jump off it.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out in my mind, you have them sitting as a short favorite here, Minnesota, minus 2.5. And, everything that I've read about this one, the sharp angle is go take the Jets. I don't know if I'm into have any interest in taking a side on this one, but the total really interested me here. You look at Minnesota, they had 42, 46.5, 47. 2 of those were road games. Their road games were actually 44.5 as well. The road games were kind of on the low side, 42 and 44.5. And then this is a neutral site game at 40.5. So it's indicating a low total here. From a side standpoint, I mean, when you looked at the Jets, I never know which Jets team I'm looking at from week to week. It's not like they've played any burners. I mean, granted, they played San Francisco 49ers in week 1 in Monday Night Football on the road and got smoked 32-19. But then you play Tennessee, and Tennessee's kind of broken in a lot of ways. Granted, Mason Rudolph kind of fixed the offense for some reason when Will Levis went out. But, you go and beat the New England Patriots, a team that we said on the air, that was the play, that was the bet to go, and the under hit in that one. And then, of course, Denver. I mean, granted, Denver's defense is going to carry them a long ways, but only putting up 9 points at home. That's embarrassing, and you only put up 2.8 yards per carry in that game. I think this is going to be a little bit of a clash of maybe a little bit of regression, just on the sheer fact that Minnesota's kind of walking into their bye after this one, and then you have the New York Jets having to muster up the energy after traveling all the way to London, playing in this game, and then they got a divisional opponent in the Buffalo Bills next week at home hosting. So it's a weird situational spot here. I want to see a bounce back here from the Jets. I don't know if I'm going to see one here, but I think there's going to be some flatness coming into this game. So if there's any type of play I'm probably going to look at, and I'm probably going to dissect this a little bit further by the time we get to Sunday, or at least before Sunday, maybe a first half underlook is going to be on this one, knowing that these teams coming over, one coming from Green Bay, traveling divisional game, one off a bad loss, and they just come to London and they're just going to play a little bit of, just flat in the first half and maybe pick things up at the end. But that's the way I'd like to lean on this one. No official play, but maybe under first half as a look.
Yeah, there's really a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot of angles that I think are worth discussing. The first one is the fact that Aaron Rodgers obviously played in the division with the Vikings for 15 years plus, and he does have a 17-11-1 record against the Vikings, which is certainly above average, albeit not the level of domination he exhibited against the Chicago Bears. But something that I saw earlier, and I just looked it up just to confirm, he has the best touchdown to interception ratio since 1970 versus an opponent over this sample size, with 57 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions against the Vikings in his career. But I think this is where the Vikings actually at -2.5 are a very strong contrarian figure. And I think this, one of the concepts we always talk about here in terms of sports betting, is when you should zoom in and when you should zoom out. I think zooming out here is more important. When you see historical domination by Aaron Rodgers against this team, now an underdog, zooming in, you would say a 4-0 team should be favored by maybe slightly more than 2.5 against a 2-2 team. But something that Guns and I were discussing off the air, a lot of teams in recent history where we've seen these ATS clusters in the beginning of the year, the books didn't move the lines aggressively towards them in week 5. The books are actually making a significant adjustment to the Vikings here. You guys have to remember, in week 1, the Vikings were an underdog on the road at open to the Giants. Just remember that. Only 5 weeks later, they are favored over the Jets. So I just want you guys again to zoom out. If somebody told you back in August that Sam Darnold would be favored over Aaron Rodgers in London, you would say no shot, which is the crucial point. Books really like the Vikings, and when books really like a team, that's who I buy. I buy book line. This is a book line. The Vikings, no matter what the 4-0, that is not the thing. And we were saying 2 years ago, Marcus Mariota and the Falcons came out and they ran off like a 6-0 ATS clip to start the year, 5-1 or 6-0. Books didn't all of a sudden make them a favorite. They kept them at +7 almost every game. So the point is, books understand the things that we're talking about even more than what we're saying to you guys. If books thought that the Vikings were fool's gold and just on a small heater, they would keep them as a road dog to these type of teams. The Jets, based on August 31st, should be -4.5 to -6 in this game. This is actually incredibly strong for Minnesota. And truthfully, it's what I said last week on Sunday. I think Kevin O'Connell is a top 5 coach in the league. I think psychologically, in terms of his connection with his locker room and group, he's top 3 alongside Kyle Shanahan and Dan Campbell. When you see a team that is performing at this level sustainably, and you hear the quotes from Kevin O'Connell, you watch the show Receiver on Netflix, you see the locker room conversation, you saw it the previous season with Kirk Cousins on Quarterback on Netflix. No, I'm not getting paid commission by Netflix, but I think it's great psychology to watch. This guy connects with his locker room. He's the type of guy I would want to play for, a guy that's willing to lay down the law with his guys, but doing it out of respect and deep long-term vision of success of the group. And it doesn't get any better within this conversation than Sam Darnold all of a sudden looking like a Hall of Famer in week 4, 2024. This guy was a journeyman. He was cast aside by 3 previous teams, fledgling teams to a degree, Carolina and the Jets. Now he's finding it. This team is connected. They blew out the Giants on the road. They hammered Green Bay early last week, 28-3. Gave it back late, but the game wasn't even close. That was coming off of back-to-back home wins against playoff Houston and Super Bowl quality Niners. The point here is this team is sustainable at this point. So I'm not on it yet, but damn it, I'm talking myself onto it. Guns, any reaction?
I like I just said, I was like, I think I'm talking myself into the under every time I'm just hearing this thing. I just remember, and maybe I'll do some more research on just the London games in general, just to see how the regression in terms of points per game went down when the teams went over to London. I'm gonna throw Jacksonville out the window because Jacksonville, that's their home stadium essentially. They're in a different ball game than the rest of the teams, but going over here is not a motivational factor for any means. I think teams are just trying to, at the very least, come out with a win, whether one side or the other, and then get the hell out of there. But I mean, Jets probably their focus has got to be towards their divisional game next week. I would think this one is just kind of like a one-off. I mean, granted. You came off that loss at home. That might be enough to motivate you into the next game. Could, possibly. But I think your divisional games are more important than these non-conference games.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that. This is a significant look ahead to a massive primetime game in the division against Buffalo next week. And, just in general, like you talk about another psychological angle here. I talked about previous teams casting Darnold aside. The Jets drafted this guy and did him dirty. There's a couple team versus player versus team revenge games this week. This is a massive Sam Darnold revenge game against the Jets. And going back on the Kevin O'Connell point, sharp psychological coaches like O'Connell will really key into that point for motivation. And I got to be honest with you, just having heard some of these stories from these teams that go over here, again, not Jacksonville, who's there for 2 weeks, gets to really almost like set up shop in London for, 15, 17 days roughly. These teams are in and out. These are really just so in and out. And what happens here is teams that really get behind the coach and connect with each other, enjoy the travel and have like a deep camaraderie kind of growth point. Teams like the Jets, who honestly, Robert Saleh, in my opinion, I mean, I don't think he's an elite psychological manager of that locker room. I think Aaron Rodgers is perpetually enigmatic to a degree. I mean, we've seen it already in the offseason. He missed minicamp. Saleh had some comments. He had to fine him. And then he comes back, kind of pushes the coach, gives him a weird look. Then he comes on the McAfee show and just sort of says, I was joking around. But I mean, there's still a bit of a weird vibe there. Like, and you get to a point, it's like Tom Brady when he was playing with the Bucs. The coach is basically the same age as the quarterback. Like, it's like they're peers. So it's like there's no hierarchy there, and the respect just doesn't exist. So I just really think that the Darnold revenge, all these psychological angles, I don't think the Jets travel that well here. And I think final point on this, I believe Aaron Rodgers has played in London in his career at least once or twice with the Packers. I don't think he performed particularly well there. And again, it's psychology. I don't think he feels comfortable over there. I think he knows it's just a little like league promo game almost. Like it's all over the place. It's just an environmental shift. So I might post this tomorrow or the next day. I think the Vikings are actually a great look here.
Sam Darnold is also this season 1-0 in revenge games because he beat the 49ers. Don't forget, he did play for the 49ers once too.
Yeah, and it really does hit with this type of player in this group, and they're just gamers. The Vikings have gamers. They really do. They have a gamer coach. They have a gamer quarterback, great receiving core. This is a pissed off group. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And as you mentioned, bye week after this week too. So they get to leave it all out there. And truthfully, they're not rushing back for another opponent, particularly in the division, where they could stay in Europe for a couple of days and just relax after the game if they wanted to. Because you guys know in a bye week, the coaches give them the next couple of days off at least. So
yeah, they don't have to report back on Wednesday. Actually, I don't even think they have to report that week if they have a good game.
That's what I mean. So talk about like your trip being so vastly different. Vikings get to show up for a big ass game and then enjoy Europe potentially, where the Jets have to go in and out, come back and face the Bills. It's just all over Minnesota from every psychological angle. So giving you guys a lot of analysis on that. We love to break it down. Official play tomorrow night, Atlanta -125. Collaboration, the Shark and the Gun. And Guns picks over Tyler Algier, 31.5. We will be back here, as always, Friday night, CFB Knowledge for College, and 10:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. It is an opportunity to dominate. We appreciate you guys immensely. Hope you guys are enjoying a Wednesday night. Enjoy your food, some libations, get that fitness, get that breath, and obviously enjoy some playoff baseball. I think people are sweating now as well. Guns picks, a pleasure as always. Close them out and let's dominate.
Yeah, the wild card has already begun, and we already have one that already punched their ticket, the Detroit Tigers, the hottest team in baseball right now since August. Actually, All-Star break for that matter. That team is absolutely cooking. But yeah, that's going to do it here for the Thursday version of the Extra Point. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Guns Picks channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Shark Wars Nation channel. Make sure you check us out on X at Sharks in Sports with an N, 88, and at Guns Picks if you haven't done so already. GUNZPICKS. Oh, yes, that is Guns Picks. And we're going to be back on Friday, Knowledge for College, where we had another tremendous week in college, too. So don't forget that. We'll be live 7 p.m. East for that show on Friday night. But that's going to do it here. Let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the board. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bang!